What's up, everybody? This is Mind Your Money with MissBeHelpful, a show that highlights people and stories that will inspire you to get your money right. And today I have an Instagram friend turned actually into a real life friend. Today I have Brittany from According to My Calculation. What's up, Brittany?
Hey.
This episode was actually recorded way back in the early pandemic days, like in March or April. So since then, Brittany's life has changed a lot. She does not go by According to My Calculation anymore on Instagram. Her new handle is at Britt Polanco. And she also had her baby, which we're going to talk about a little bit in this episode. Enjoy.
I've been so excited to have you on. So for those of you who have never heard of Brittany's story, obviously she's going to share it in a little bit, but Brittany and I met on Instagram through like a lot of the personal finance and like debt-free community posts. And then we met in real life at FinCon, which was so fun. And I just knew that I had to have her on because her Instagram stuff is hilarious. It's growing so quickly, and she just adds a lot of value with like her monthly challenges and stuff, which I really enjoy either participating in or watching from afar. Because sometimes I'll be like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna commit. I'm not gonna commit myself to that because I already know I'm not gonna do it. But yes, we'll talk about all that good stuff. But Brittany, let's start with some fun questions first, and then we'll come back to the intro. What is a very expensive purchase that you made in your life that you think back on it and you just regret it completely? You wish you could just take it back and get that money back.
Okay, so mine is actually extremely big. I regret it, but I didn't regret it enough to get rid of it. But it was a super, super huge financial mistake that I made. And that's my car. So I bought a car in 2016, and it was the first car that I ever bought. I had gotten my license less than a year before that, and I bought it brand new. So brand new, no previous owner. I just went into a lot and was like, I want that one.
Did you pay cash? Did you pay for it in cash? In full?
No.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even put anything down on it. That's how bad it was. I put nothing down on it.
Oh, wait. Oh, how old were you?
I was 22.
Oh, so that makes sense. 22.
Yeah. I was super young, and like I honestly had no idea about anything. Like neither of my parents owned a car, so I just didn't know. And I was like, hey, yeah, I feel like I should have a new car. I mean, I don't want anyone else to have driven it before, so I'm just gonna get this one. So I financed it with my husband, and we had a 3.9% interest rate, and my car payment was $441. So I see 441, the number, a lot, all the time. And every time I see it, I'm like, that was my car payment.
Car payment is haunting me.
It definitely was. And ironically, I actually had lost my job a month after I bought that car. So it was a mess. It was a mess. But I'm happy to say it's paid off now. And I still do own it, and I plan on owning it until it does not drive anymore.
You better drive it.
Yeah,
bro, you don't have a choice.
You
gotta make that money worth it. You have to drive that car till it's falling apart while you in it.
Wow. I probably will never buy a new car ever again, because now I understand.
Yes,
that it's really not that serious to buy a new car, and you can have a used car that's nice, does the same thing, and a lot less expensive. So
that's right.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, well, that's the thing. You learn from that. And it's funny because obviously I'm in New York City. We don't need no car. We're going nowhere in a car. It doesn't make sense to have a car unless, it's going to be a luxury that you're actually going to use. And so I hop on the subway. Most people in my family don't have a car. And then all of a sudden, as I started getting older, people started getting cars, and they all lease cars. Very rarely have I seen them seriously researching to buy a certified pre-owned vehicle that is going to be good quality. Like, it's just, I don't think most people who, grow up in a regular environment, average family, would go through all that effort to find a car that's actually affordable and high quality. I think people are just like, this is just, if you want a car, you got to buy one, like a new one. Like, I think a lot of people just have that mentality. Because I've heard that a lot from different women that I have, that I've interviewed so far, that the car was something that they regret. And I've also heard that they didn't know that buying a brand new car was such a big deal, that as soon as you drive it off the lot, it depreciates. Like, but they didn't,
no idea.
People just don't know that, right? So it's scary stuff. But I hear you, sounds like you learned your lesson, girl. I will see you buying no new cars, not never. Okay. Okay, so what about on the flip side of that? What is the time that you bought something that maybe other people will look at your budget and think that it was a crazy, too expensive type of purchase, but you actually stand by that purchase and you're like, nah, Joe, that was worth it for me?
Yeah, so for me, I think that's actually kind of a reoccurring expense. So I'm not a very big purchaser. You wouldn't be able to tell that from my very expensive car, but I'm not very big on like having things and buying things. So mine would be my apartment. So I'm really big on the space that I live in. Like I value that a lot because I'm a homebody. I like to be home. I'm an introvert. So being in a space that I love is really, really important to me. And I know some people would look at it and say, well, why don't you rent $200, $300 cheaper? And I could, but for me and for the things that I value, it just wouldn't be worth it. So that is definitely an expense that I think most people would think maybe that's a bit much, but for me, I'm completely comfortable with that because it's my highest value and I'm able to cut back on other things that I don't really care about so much that other people might. So like what you said, I think that's like super, super big because we don't all understand why we buy the things that we buy because we're all different people.
That's right.
But that's like my big thing and other people might not get it, but I never, ever, ever have regretted any of my apartments and spending a little bit more on them because I literally spend most of my time there. So I'm pretty comfortable with doing that.
It makes a lot of sense for you. That's just your thing. Like, when we were at FinCon, we heard Ramit Sethi was the keynote speaker, and his big thing that he's always talked about since he wrote his first book, whatever, 10 years ago now, whatever. But his whole thing is about money dial, right? Turning up your money dial in the places, in the categories of your budget that you freaking love and just get so much joy from, and then turning it down to a point where you're spending the minimal possible amount on those things that you don't care about. So, sounds like you already identified those things, and you are able to then take all the money, and just throw it onto spending extra on an apartment. And I can relate to that because I'm not a homeowner. I'm not like in real estate. I don't for me right now, I just throw all my money into the stock market and I just try to spend like very minimally. But I do because I split rent with my boyfriend, I have the past 2 or 3 apartments, we've tended to go on the nicer side. If you're watching the YouTube version of this recording right now, you can see my kitchen in the background, which is, it's so pretty. I just love that backsplash in my kitchen. And I'm just like, hashtag IKEA back there. But yeah, I think if you get a space that really brings you a lot of joy and you get a lot of value from it, especially right now, a lot of people are in their apartment. They're quarantined. It's coronavirus.
Oh, yeah.
We have to in an apartment. Imagine if I was in an apartment that I really hated, my quality of life, your quality of life would really decline. So I think it makes sense to figure out if that is what matters to you so much, to have the space that you love, to make sure that you crank up that money dial within reason. Don't go spending $5,000 a month on an apartment. That's just ridiculous. But okay, if you're out there spending $5,000 a month on an apartment, I really hope that that's only 40% of your income. But do you?
I always make sure.
Do you though? I don't want to be telling anybody what to do, but I'm just saying there's a lot of money. All right, you better be a high income earner out there. Okay, so for anybody who does not know Brittany, obviously you can tell she's very real. She's very honest. She's just super chill, laid back, and I don't know. I feel like 2 things that I love and was struck by because of her personality when I actually met her in person was one, and I could tell this from her Instagram. Anybody who follows her on Instagram knows too, one, she doesn't really hold back. She's very blunt in terms of her honest opinion is going to come out. She's not going to sugarcoat it. She's not going to, be all sweet about trying to, be this way or that way. She's just going to say what it is. And I love that about her. And the second thing is that she's so quirky. All of her Instagram stories are so fun to watch. Just always little jokes here and there, funny faces. She's just literally you belong on The Office, because every time you make faces to the camera, I'm like, this is hilarious. So I love it. I love following you. I love seeing your little family grow. And I just want to make sure other people get a sense for what you're all about and what your growing Instagram brand has become. So go ahead and tell, for people who have not, seen your content before on Instagram, tell them what is According to My Calculation all about, why you chose to start it, and and tell us a little bit about that.
So basically, I started According to My Calculation when I began my debt-free journey. I used it pretty much as a platform to document what I was doing, and I did that because I wanted, one, the accountability. I also wanted I wanted other people to know what I was doing, because I felt like I actually started on my personal account. So I didn't create another account. So pretty much all my friends and family, I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm paying off debt. And I thought that was important for me to do, because I wanted them to see that this is something that someone that they've known for so long, that they've either grown up with or went to high school with, this is something that they're doing. They knew the person I was then, and So they know that I'm just like some normal person. You know, it wasn't just like some finance account that was like, hey, I'm paying off my debt and I'm doing this and that. It was just a normal person doing something with a normal person income.
That's right.
Just an everyday person. So I thought that was really important for me, and that's why I decided to document it. And I also I started to use it as a way to explain these little things that I never knew. So sometimes I'll say something and I'll just think like, wow, this is so basic. But then I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't know that at all. So I know that there are people out there that don't too. So I pretty much use that as my platform to document what I'm doing, in hopes that people see that and then they say, hey, I can do that too, because Brittany's doing it. She's a normal person. Why can't I do it? So that's pretty much why I started it. My debt-free journey began with the Minimalists. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I started listening to their podcast, and they had a few money podcasts. And I've always been a very big numbers person, but I've never really dived into like budgeting and figuring out like how much money I owed or what I could do to pay it off. Or I just didn't really think about that stuff. I didn't really care. It just wasn't something that was on my brain. So when I listened to their money podcasts, everything that they were saying, I was like, oh wow, that sounds really cool. Like, I want to do this. I want to start a budget. I want to count stuff, because I was always a math person. And you don't have to be a math person, but it was just something that drew me to it.
Right.
So from there, so from there, I started budgeting, and I was like, hey, yeah, I can do this. But it didn't pick up until, so I was in school for accounting, and I took a personal finance class. And so that was when it really, really, really clicked to me that like, okay, I need to do something about the situation that I'm in. Because I didn't even really like recognize what I was doing. Like I said with my car, like I thought it was just, oh, I have a $441 payment, it's whatever. That's normal. That's what people do. And with my student loans, I was like, okay, like I'm taking $10,000, $15,000 in student loans, whatever. That's what people do. That's what you got to do to go to college. And so it never really like clicked to me until I took my personal finance class after having listened to the Minimalists and stuff, which is something that I know most people don't even like have the opportunity to be exposed to that kind of thing in college. But because I was doing accounting, that was something that I learned and that I took a little bit more serious because of the field.
That's awesome. I feel like sometimes even when you study some sort of financial major, like, financial, whatever, finance or business or even accounting, even in those cases, a lot of times people that study that still don't get access to a personal finance class. So I feel like you were, even though you think like, oh, it's because I studied accounting. Now, girl, you were actually just lucky, because even still there are tons of colleges that have all the accounting classes, all the business, entrepreneurship, all the whatever, and no personal finance class on the roster. So I feel like, you lucked out. Where did you do accounting? What school did you go to?
I went to California College in San Diego. So it was a really small school, and they kind of focused on things like that, like real life classes and courses.
I think that's one of the things, man. A lot of people, they get so obsessed with these big colleges, these big state schools. They want to go into the dream school, and it's like sometimes those smaller schools that people underestimate the value of the education, because they have classes that are really out of, not necessarily out of the box, but like not usually available at other colleges that might be whatever bigger, that might be more popular. Because the thing is, those little schools, like, they have so much value to draw people in. If your school is much smaller, like under the radar, take advantage and look for courses that usually you don't see, and those are going to be classes that will really make your education. I feel like I just wish, because I had all these classes, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, international this, oh, education policy, oh, this. It's like, oh, it sounds so fancy. What is it doing for me today in my day-to-day life? The fact that I took ed policy classes, the fact that I understand how education policy takes thousands of years to work and to get changed. Like, it doesn't. Now, I learned it, and I get it, but it is. I just really wish I had something like a personal finance that's hands-on. It's going to help me with my everyday life. So
that was definitely one of the biggest things that I think changed the course of what I was doing, because it really put me on that. Okay, like, now's the time. I need to look at my student loans. I need to look at this, and I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And that's pretty much where it started.
Do you remember if you knew your student loan interest rate before you took that class?
No. And I think I understood that I was taking out a lot of money and I knew that, but because it was so normal, I didn't second guess it. I was just kind of like, I'm just going to graduate college, and then whatever happens, happens. But once I started doing that and I finally decided to take personal finance a little more seriously, even after that class, I started listening to podcasts. And that's when I started documenting my journey. And I took it upon myself to learn these things that I was never taught because I just, my parents were never taught these things.
That's right.
The last thing on their mind was probably teaching me about money. They just didn't know themselves to be able to teach me. So,
that's right.
So that was definitely the kicker. That's what got it all started. And from there, we listed a budget. We wrote a budget down. We figured out how much debt we had in total, and it like really, 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 really shocked me. We were over $80,000 in debt.
Oof. And you and your husband combined.
Yes, but it was mostly me.
I was like, let's see who's the one with more debt, because I have a feeling you just talk about a new car and your college student loans. Like,
yeah. No, it was definitely mostly me because of school. My husband was in the military, so he didn't have to pay for school. So that was not something that we had to worry about for him. He had his car and then credit cards, and that was pretty much it. We didn't have a lot of credit card debt because I think both of us are naturally low maintenance people, I guess you would say. We're not frugal. I wouldn't call us frugal because I like nicer things when I do like things, if that makes sense. But I don't like a lot of things. So that's, I think,
minimal.
It balances.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like minimalism was probably perfect for you as your first draw into all of this stuff. Definitely. Because it sounds like you guys are very minimal people, though you do care about your high quality things, but obviously in small amounts. So actually, while you were talking, I was curious. I'm like, I feel like I think like 441 is actually not far from the average car payment or whatever, but I didn't know. So I just looked it up, and it's the average monthly car payment in the United States is $550 for a brand new vehicle. So you were about 110 under. But if you have a used vehicle, people who have a used vehicle usually still have a payment, because a lot of people cannot afford to pay even for a used vehicle with folk in cash. So if you have a used vehicle, it's $393. And then if you lease a car, then you're at $452 a month. So you were paying basically close to what the average payment for a lease car is, even though you bought a brand new car and owned it. So I guess that's where you probably people at the dealership probably like to show you those numbers and tell you got a great deal, you're getting a brand new car for this much or that. But they don't really tell you over time how it how it accumulates, how the interest accrues. And Americans, like, it's like trillions of dollars that people owe just from auto loans, like, which is crazy because everybody talks so much about student loans, trillions of dollars in student loans, trillions of dollars in this kind of debt and that kind of debt. But car loans is one of them. And it's because of the lack of education, teaching people that there's no reason why you should go and get a brand new car fresh off the lot, especially if it's your first purchase of a car. This is the car you're going to use to practice driving. This is a car you're going to use to get good at driving. Like, make it a hoopty and upgrade when you're actually a really good driver and have a better financial situation if you really desperately want to upgrade it. But I don't think these things are talked about. Like you said, like, your parents didn't teach you these things. A lot of people don't talk about these things. So how are you supposed to know?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. So let's go back a little bit because I want to learn about your upbringing. I always feel like people's money stories, even though they might not realize it, are rooted there. And you talked a lot about being minimal, which I wonder if it comes from your mom and dad or from like something that you experienced growing up. So tell us about like what was it like growing up? I know you grew up in the Bronx. You ended up going to San Diego for school, obviously, because you just shared that. But talk about what early memories do you have related to money, or early lessons that you learned about money when you were growing up?
Yeah, so my parents, so like you said, I grew up in the Bronx. I was born and raised in the Bronx, and my parents were never together. So they kind of just like had me, and we're not together anymore. So
happily.
But I did. So I kind of grew up in kind of like a split home. So my mom and my dad are actually both very, very different. And I get my simplicity from my dad and not so much from my mom. So I think I just kind of got both views of like the opposite sides of the spectrum. Yeah. And then I kind of decided that living more simply was more for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I grew up in a low income family. My mom, she works in the city since I was a kid, since I was born practically. And, she definitely did everything that she could to support us, and we always had a roof over our heads. We never had to worry about food or anything like that, but we were definitely raised lower income. But I think that a lot of my maybe simplicity from my dad comes into play in my life now. But from my mom's kind of, I would say I get a lot of my mom's work ethic.
Yeah.
She's definitely, I've never like not seen my mom working. And so, and I like a lot of the women in my life, actually like the older women in my life, I've always seen women working, and that's definitely a very big thing for me. Like my mom always, even though she didn't go to college, she always made sure that like education was really important. And
yeah,
she wanted me to go to school. And when I moved to California, so I actually moved to California to be with my then boyfriend, who is now my husband. And when I went to California, she was super supportive. Like obviously a parent will miss you, but she was really supportive because she knew that there was more out there for me to explore, and to be in a place that I've actually always wanted to live. When I was in high school, I wanted to move to California, and that was always like my big thing. But I didn't end up moving until I was 20. I would think I was 22. That was the year that I moved to California. And she was very supportive of that. And yeah, I think that like I love New York, and New York is like obviously one of the greatest cities ever. But
hello, you have to say that because we both New Yorkers.
Yeah, but like I also knew that I was like my personality was just different than a New Yorker. So like I love California, and I think that it was more me, more laid back, more chill, more. I think New York, like I always found myself in high school, even though I didn't, like I've never really cared about these things, like looking, like of course I like to be cute, but I've never really cared about wearing like designer and this and that. That's just never been me. And I get that some people like that, some people genuinely value and like that, but that's never been me. But I always felt like I had to kind of like fit in that way in New York.
Yes.
And so that was always really hard for me because I didn't want to, but I always felt like everyone was around me was doing it, and I kind of like had to like look this part and always be this kind of person. And when I went to California, it was completely different.
Yeah, I feel like in New York, there's especially if you go to a public high school in New York City. Did you go to public high school here in New York?
I did, yeah.
I feel like public high schools in New York City, it's like a certain culture. Like, I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. It's nothing like what you see in Mean Girls. It's nothing like what you see. Like, it's nothing like that. And like in a lot of those schools, you see like everybody's so different. Everybody's like coming from all these different places. You have like, no. New York City, everybody is the same. Every single person cares about being popular and wearing name brands and like being seen and being cool. And, you know, and it's like, because everybody takes the train together all the time to get to and from school, it gets exacerbated because you spend a lot of time with each other, going to school, going back home, and you get to see what each other's wearing and what the brands are and what other kids got. And it's just, for some reason, it's just all you really care about as a teenager when you give into that like culture is like the brand names, what everyone's wearing, how much money that costs. And it's just, it's so infectious too. So like, even if you genuinely don't care, like Brittany, like you clearly don't care about this stuff, but you had to pretend you cared. So just to be in with the in crowd like that. And I felt like that in middle school. I felt like that in high school. Well, actually in middle school, I felt like that a lot. In high school, it had already bled into who I was, and I actually cared about it. Like, but in middle school, I didn't care about it. I was just pretending. But by the time I got to high school, oh, trust me, I cared and I wanted the brand. They had gotten to me, you know what I mean? So, but eventually when I got older, I didn't care anymore. But I think I went back to like how I originally was. But just because of the money, like I was just like, okay, pay for brand names is too expensive. And it's not even about quality. It's about the brand and showing off the, you know, whatever. So I feel like I kind of learned that later, but okay, so it sounds like in your house, you really saw sort of like two totally separate, I don't know if the word is like even related to financial, but just lifestyles, right? Like two totally different approaches to life. And you sort of like one of them hit more with you, which was your dad. And your vibe is definitely very chill for a New Yorker. Like a girl from the Bronx usually like talk fast, moving fast, snap. Brittany is Brittany is like definitely a New Yorker who belonged in Cali. So it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Yeah. Okay. So then you move to Cali, you get a new car, you eventually marry your husband, you guys decide to join all of your finances. And now you guys are like serious at tackling this debt. And then you decided to create an online platform or brand, according to my calculation, to share that with other people, which makes a lot of sense because you were already sharing it with, people that, your family and friends, and they were looking at it like, oh, wow, that's what Brittany's doing. So that makes sense. It kind of like evolved to the point where now you're sharing that there. So one of the things I love a lot about your Instagram is that you do monthly challenges, and they're different every single month. Can you tell us a little bit about, just like some of the things that you've done and how you use this as accountability, as a tool for good? Like maybe some of your favorite challenges, like what were some of your favorite challenges that you've done and why you think that they've become so popular? Because I see people tagging them all the time in stories. So yeah, tell us about them.
Yeah, so every month I put out a spending tracker. And initially they used to be no spend, but I didn't like the pressure of like telling people don't spend at all. Yeah, so then it became just like a spending tracker. So it's like the days that you do spend, and is it essential? Is it not? What are your goals for your spending that month? And everyone makes their own goals. So it's not like, okay, the challenge is no spend days for 3 weeks or whatever. Everyone makes their own goals depending on what they want to accomplish. Some people want a less spend days because they're accomplishing a huge debt-free goal. There's some people are past that point and they just want to be more mindful of their spending. So we make those the spending tracker. And then we also do another challenge. And usually I have found that they tend to be more health, fitness and health related. So or at least those have been my favorite. But we've done Muscle March. That was last year. That was one of my favorites because it encouraged everybody to go to the gym and work out or do something and just be active and work out. And that was fun, just like seeing people do that. And we did something similar last month as well for Move It March. Yeah, and that was really fun because it's nice like watching other people be active, and it kind of sometimes it was like, at least for me, like if I wasn't tracking these things and having like Instagram as my accountability partner, I would do it less often. It's also nice when people are like, oh yeah, we did this and I'm going to continue it for next month, or I'm going to make another one for this month and just continue the movement thing. And it's nice because we're all just kind of like on the same team of like holding each other accountable for doing these things that we want to accomplish. So the health related ones are usually my favorite. We've done Agua April. So we all just like pick a water goal intake and then just drink water the entire month. And by the end of it, people were like, oh my God, my skin is glowing. I'm feeling great. And I'm like, ooh, that's the water.
You'd be surprised how many people don't drink water. My mom does not drink water ever at all. And she has to force herself. Every time I'm in the house, I'm like, Mommy, did you drink 8 cups of water today? Like, she just doesn't like it. Doesn't like the taste of water. She just tastes like nothing. And literally drinking it. And a lot of people are like that. And it's crazy because I drink water so much. I drink water literally every second. I wake up, first thing I do is probably just drink water. Like so it's interesting to me, but I love that because it makes it Brittany's describing it as just kind of like an accountability group, but it's also very fun because you get to, so I did Food at Home February. And what I love about it is like every day you kind of look forward to going onto the tracker and like updating with your like emojis. And the thing is, you pick the emojis that you want. You pick the goals. You decorate it however you like. You put, your own take, your own personal style to it. And so then every day you kind of like going on, you take a screenshot again of the previous day and you add your little emoji for that day. And it's sort of, a lot of people are on social media all the time anyway. So why not just involve it in your tracking of the things that you like? So it was really nice to see all the trackers too, like to see other people's and to encourage them. And people started encouraging me that weren't even doing the challenge because I posted in my stories and people were like, oh girl, you're doing real good. You got this many days. Go ahead. And I was like getting support from people that are not even doing the challenge. So I think I thought it was such a positive experience. So yeah, it's just a great thing that you do. And obviously your templates always have like, according to my calculation on them. So if you see them floating around there, you know that it was Brittany that created them. And I just see it as such a easy way to get people to bring each other together and in a positive way, hold each other accountable to, do what they said they wanted to achieve, the goal that you said you wanted to achieve.
Yeah, they're really fun.
Yeah, they are. They're really fun. So you guys definitely check them out on Instagram. Okay, so I usually like to Well, first of all, I have to talk about the fact that you're going to be a new mommy before I give you the last question, because for those of you that didn't know, or if you already know Brittany, you probably knew because she's been posting her progress, her updates on, I guess it is progress to, cook the baby, right? But yeah, she's been posting updates and pics and stuff. So congratulations on almost being a real full out mommy with a baby in your hands very soon. But how do you think your life is? How do you think, or just maybe some early things that you've already sort of put in place and planning your budget and talked about with your husband? What are some ways you think that the baby's going to change your financial world? Because it's going to be fun once you go back after this comes out to listen back one day and like once the baby's already here, and then you're going to see what you thought things would be like for you. And I just think that I would just love to be able to provide that for you. So what do you think is going to be the main thing that's going to change when the baby comes, specifically when it comes to your finances?
I think that my budget, just in general, my budget is going to change completely. Because these are the kind of things I do for fun, I've already created like a mock budget for when the baby comes, and like trying to figure out like what is it going to cost every month for diapers, for food, like whatever the case is, and putting that into my budget and kind of saying, okay, this is probably, I compare our income to like what we're making now. I mean, it could go up, it could go down, but I compared it to what we're making now, and I just threw a baby budget in there. I'm like, okay, we're going to spend this much probably on the baby this month. Don't know yet, but it gave me like a good estimate. I also made sure to make another one for like when I'm on paid family leave, because you don't make as much money when you're on paid family leave. So I made sure that these numbers work. Yeah.
I don't understand. Yeah. Literally have the crappiest paid family leave thing. That's a conversation for another podcast though, but
yeah,
that's so thorough though. So you have literally like multiple budgets to predict what your situation is going to be like in the future with the baby.
Yeah, so I did that, and luckily I'm able to get 4 months off, which is really nice. So I'll be able to spend that time and not have to worry about daycare for that time, and then my husband will get 2.5 months after. So I set that plan in my head. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to make on paid family leave. This is what Leo will continue to make. This is what I'll make on paid family leave, and how all that will look. So yeah, I pretty much just made that budget, what everything will look like from each point of the, I guess, when the baby comes, and then what it'll look like when we're both back to work and when the baby's in daycare. So I'm kind of estimating daycare numbers right now because I don't really know, but it's expensive, and I kind of didn't really think that it would be, but as expensive as people would say. I kind of was just hoping people were being a little bit dramatic, but no, they're not. It's really expensive.
They're not. You are literally buying. You're buying 2 brand new cars.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But luckily, like throughout this whole journey, we've been able to live off of half of our income most months. Nice. So once we're in that position, I think that will be okay. I mean, it does hurt my heart a little bit, but I think that will be okay. And it helped me mentally, I think, to know that financially it will be obviously a little bit tighter than it was without a baby, but it's still manageable. And I think that helps me a lot to know that that finances will change, but it won't change to the point where we can't do it. And it's so stressful, because I think I think obviously finances in general play such a big role in families. But the fact that we're able to like say, okay, this is how it's going to be. And we've worked our way to this point with paying off our debt and being able to save money. And now that we're having the baby, we feel a lot more secure. And I feel like it takes away a lot of stress from being a parent. I mean, there's definitely more stresses than just financial when it comes to being a new mom, but that not having that at the back of my mind really helps. But with the pregnancy itself, we spent so much money on like just medical. I have a high deductible health plan, and we've spent about $1,500 within the past like 4 months. So we're like averaging $400 or $500 a month just on medical, and that's been like a little crazy to see. But we have our HSA that I get with my job, and they've contributed to my HSA, which has been great. And I've been putting money aside out of my paychecks to put that for medical as well, because I know that's going to be another huge expense too. But other than that, I mean, I think just having those budgets and figuring out what everything is going to look like at every stage was really, really, really helpful for me.
That's awesome. I think I saw, for those of you who heard Brittany just talk about right now how she has an HSA, if you didn't know what that is, that's a high yield savings account. I'm bugging. That's a health savings account. A health savings account is basically an investment account, or you can actually open one at a bank now yourself, which I didn't even realize until recently. But generally speaking, when your job offers it as a perk, it's generally an account where it is invested and the money that comes into it is before taxes. And then whatever you put in, your job will usually put in as well. So it's kind of like a retirement plan, but it's meant specifically for your health and generally does not have like as much money in there. Usually you wouldn't try to put like, 10% of your income in there. I mean, some people might do that, but it's generally just, a smaller thing.
I think it definitely depends on what stage you are. Like when it comes to like I likely wouldn't be contributing this much to my HSA if I wasn't pregnant. But because I know that these medical expenses are coming up, I know I'm going to use it, and so it's beneficial to me because it comes out pre-tax, and it's just less to think about and worry about when it's coming out of my paycheck. And then there are definitely the benefits that come with having an HSA. Like my employer contributed one time at the beginning, and that's covered half of my cost so far. It's still very expensive medical wise, but
it is. But it's smart of you to get ahead of it and take advantage of knowing what type of accounts there are that you're using. I mean, if you guys follow her, obviously, according to my calculation on Instagram, she has I think it's your insurance highlight. If you scroll past your first few highlights and go towards the end, she has a highlight called insurance. In there, she kind of goes through the nitty gritty of a high yield savings, of a health savings account, and the difference between a health savings account and a flexible spending account, which a lot of people think is the same or that they're similar, but they're very different. So, I mean, just again, I don't know. I can't say it enough. A lot of like very relatable, down to earth content coming from Brittany. She literally has like about to be 11,000 followers. So, I mean, obviously it's helpful for you to have 11,000 people come together to follow what you're doing. It's not just because, she's very pretty, because she is, but it's also because her content is very, very helpful. So, I mean, thank you so much for just, setting aside time today to talk to us, to get so personal and tell us about like your journey, what your projections are when baby comes, everything that you've gone through with your husband and getting your budget together and getting your finances in order so you guys could become debt free, admitting to some of your mistakes, buying cars and like going out here and spending a lot of money. But being honest about like where you value, things and where you're not willing to like, kind of cut corners, and where you do put money because it brings you joy. I really love people being honest about stuff like that, and just, being raw, being real. Like there's no need to pretend everybody's as frugal 100%. Like just be the way that you are, and people really feel inspired by that. By your honesty and by your example. So thank you. The way that I've been wrapping up these interviews, which has been really fun, is there is going to be a dollar bill that I'm going to put together in Photoshop with your face on it. And then above your face is going to be your money motto or your money mantra, money message, whatever you want to call it. But basically, every time people touch money, every time they see money, every time they have money, they're going to see this message. So what would your money message be?
I would say my money message would be, if someone was looking at this every time they wanted to spend money, I would say, does this purchase align with who you are? So are you buying something because you feel like you should have it, or you feel like other people think you should have it? Or is it because this is actually the person that you are? And it takes some time to figure out what that is for you. It definitely took me some time, but I think it's important to know and to figure out for yourself if the things that you are purchasing aligns with the person that you are.
Yes, I love that so much, because well, first of all, there's two parts to that. First, it's, thinking about the purchase. And the second part is thinking about who you are and then figuring out if they match. And for me, it took me a long time to finally admit that I'm not that girl. I'm not that girl who goes to the salon and get tips. I'm not that girl who pays to have her hair. I'm not that girl who is going to go get her eyebrows threaded every week. I'm not that girl. Like there were things that I wanted to pretend I cared about just so I could look like X, Y, Z. And it's just like, I finally let go of the pressure to look and act a certain way. It was like, no, that's just not me. And once I did that, it became much easier to answer that question, or your money motto became easier for me personally. So I really like that one. Does this purchase align with who you are? Ask yourself that every time you're about to Amazon one click buy, okay? It's not just these dollars out here. It's also online purchases, people.
Yeah.
Love that. All right. So again, for those of you who don't know, Brittany is
at Britt Polanco.
all one word, no spaces, no dashes, no gaps, no nothing, on Instagram. Go follow her, go support her. And if you heard this episode and found out about Brittany for the very first time from this, whether it was on YouTube or whether it was on the podcast, please reach out to Brittany and tell her that she inspired you with her story and with her realness, because I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, Brittany, but I tend to really like when people reach out to me and let me know that I inspired them.
I do. I see.
Yeah. All right. So you heard it from her. She said it's cool. Reach out to her, let her know. And yeah, thank you, Brittany. This was so fun. This was so great. I knew you would just be open book about everything. So that's why I wanted to make sure to have you on. And I just can't wait to see some pictures on Instagram of the baby.
I know. I'm so excited.
All right. Thanks, Brittany. If you like this video, which I'm sure you did because the video was the bomb, then you're going to want to watch all the other episodes of the Mind Your Money with MissBeHelpful podcast. And they're all right here in this playlist. So click the playlist to watch those episodes. And if you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Click the subscribe button right now so you can get videos every single week and to join Team Be Helpful right here. That's all I have for you guys. Till next time, peace.